Good morning and welcome to the Ask Weldon Show, episode 176. Today we're going to talk about mostly pregame rituals. And you're going to learn what the word psychobiosocial states means. It's not one word, it's two words. And you're going to learn about the difference between anger and tilt. This is the Ask Weldon Show. I am Weldon. I'm a sports psychology trainer who works with professional esport athletes. And this is the show where you guys ask me questions about high performance and peak performance in life and video games, specifically esport, competitive video games. Please do not message me about... I don't want to pick on Zelda, because I actually like Zelda, but I can't think of another game. So, do not message me about Zelda. All right. Unless there's like a fighting game, Zelda, that came out that I'm unaware of. But you can play Zelda, just hard to do peak performance as Zelda. I guess if you're a creative... Anyway, all right, let's get into the show, you guys. Updates. Any news, any updates? I got my iPhone case finally, or my phone case. I suppose I don't need to say that I got an iPhone case, but I just got a phone case that I've been waiting for since I got this new phone, and it's kind of what I expected. Very grippy. I like it. I think I've already dropped my phone like 4 times, so I'm glad that it's finally encased, at least a little bit. What other updates do I have? Nothing major from yesterday, so I suppose we can jump right into it. I take these questions through Anchor. You're going to hear them in a second here. And as always, I would like to propose that you guys go to anchor.fm/Weldon Green and call into the show, because I need questions. This show is fueled on questions. You are the oxygen in the fire. You know when you take oxygen away from a fire, what happens? Scientists out there? Yes, that's right. It dies. So I need your questions, and I need them in audio form because it's the best way to do the show, so that there's a little breakup between my voice and other people's voices, and we get to hear the context of your story, and you have a full minute to answer it. And the Anchor app that you use to call in the questions actually does a really good job of making you sound cool. It like they have some sort of audio mastering algorithm or whatever that gives you this kind of more radio-esque voice, despite the really bad mic on your phone. So it's not really that horrible, and you get to be on YouTube. So there you go. Call into the show right now. And also, if you're too nervous to call in the show but you still want to ask a question, come to twitch.tv/MindGamesWeldon for the pre and post show chat question answering bonanza. And there you type your questions instead of saying them, so it's probably better for y'all. All right. The first question here is from John Keller. Let me turn up my desktop audio.
Hey, Weldon. So my question today is there a lot of players that use rituals before the game? And do you think that it actually helps? Is there like a placebo effect? And also, good luck with your baby, and thank you.
All right, thank you, John. Yes, there are a lot of players and professional athletes that use pregame rituals. I would say all of them do and should, and whether you do it or not, you probably subconsciously do it. And yes, you should use them, and no, the effect is not above placebo, unless it's something like taking caffeine or whatever. So pregame rituals work to the extent that you train them to work, and that you believe in them. And otherwise, they have no real effect on performance. And mostly the effect that they have is on the pre-performance emotional regulation. So the emotional regulation that you have going into performance, they do not actually affect your performance other than the way that emotions would then affect your performance. Okay, does that make sense? And I'll get into what that looks like with the last question. But basically, you have this thing called IZOF, the individual zone of optimal functioning, which is your special cocktail of emotions that that show up when you're having your best performance, and a special cocktail of emotions also shows up when you have your worst performance, by the way. Your individual zone of worst functioning, I would say. So depending on what your optimal functioning zone is, and the cocktail of emotions that reliably show up, and the ones that are absent also, that's important to know which ones are absent during that. you can more easily predict whether or not you're going to have like a super amazing day or super amazing game. And partly that's like you trigger emotions during and before the sporting event, and then those result in the outcome. And then in other ways, your sporting event, the fact that it's going well, actually gives you those emotions so that they feed into it. So it's not all causal. And then on other times, you can't even have certain emotions because you don't have the mental balance or the mental wherewithal at that time to even experience. You might be burned out, you might be injured, something like that, or emotionally distressed, and then you can't even experience that emotion, and it's going to play out in your performance. So this is all based on theoretical framework of Yuri Hannon, who's a sports psychology researcher who researches emotions in sport. And the current phrase regarding pre-performance routines is the psychobiosocial states. So psychological states, biological states, because these things mix together. They were trying to find a way to basically say, like, okay, it's not just your emotions pre-performance; it's your arousal state, your arousal level, and your framework about how you're thinking about emotions, not just the actual emotions that you're experiencing, and then also your embeddedness in the social fabric of what you're doing. So, for example, we know that like social obligations to teammates can improve performance, and we know that stress with a teammate can like cause you to have anxiety and mess a performance up. So all of these things play out in how your performance actually happens. And so psycho, bio, social, psychological, biological, sociological states is like the framework that all fits under. So yes, pre-performance routines work. You should build them. I build pre-performance routines with my athletes by having them go through an eyes-off like identification exercise where here's what it looks like. You basically think of your best performance ever, and you write down all the emotions that you, like what you did before. Okay, it's a whole worksheet, which it's gonna be tough to describe, but basically just journal about it, okay? Write down what you did, thought, and felt before the event, leading up to it, and then during it. And try to do like the morning of, 10 minutes before, and during. Journal about those 3 different times. Make a little grid, 9-way grid, right? So it's the morning of the event, just before the event, and during the event, and then it's like, what did you think? What did you feel? What did you do? So what were your actions? What were your thoughts? Meaning like what were the self-talk that you have? And then what were your feelings? Like what were you actually feeling? Okay. And just journal about those nine boxes. And then do the same thing for your worst performance. And before you journal at all, you should do imagery, and you should try to visualize and bring yourself back in time to your worst performance and your best performance. You should spend like at least a minute and a half, maybe 3 minutes, like visualizing that performance and trying to build an imagery scene in your head of imagery, including all 5 senses, and try to get yourself back there and remember that whole day, okay, so that you can get an accurate recall. And then you just basically look at both charts, and you maybe graph the emotions. There's various ways you can look at graphing them, but I would say extract all the emotional words from there, and then like rate them, I guess, with the level of intensity or the level of the lack of intensity that they existed. And then you can see that you have emotions that are present when you're both in a high performance mode and in a bad performance mode. And you're going to see that you have emotions that are present when you're in a bad performance mode. And those are the ones you need to look at, because their lack of presence in the high performance mode probably has a lot to do with your high performance. And then you can take a psychobiosocial states like survey, which I think you might be able to find online if you search it, but probably not. It's not that popular or spread yet. But anyway, so we identify the eyes off like framework that the athlete has, and then we build a pre-performance routine that is geared towards those emotions, and geared toward not experiencing the emotions that show up in the negative performance zone. Okay, and that is how we build an effective pre-performance routine. And then we mix in that with science, like you should have caffeine 45 minutes before your event. You should have L-theanine as well. Making sure that we create a pre-performance routine that's resilient and that gives you the access to different parts of it, like a small one, a medium one, and a full one, so that if you're in a rush, you can still like tap into that preparation. And then make sure that you are thinking about it correctly, meaning that it's placebo, that it's that it's like it's the repetition that actually gives you the current framework, and it's mostly the mental work that you need to do to cause the effect of like getting you into the right arousal state for the game. And also, don't ignore the arousal part. Like testosterone is a key performance chemical, and I don't want to say steroid, so that's what it is, but hormone, let's say. And so the more that you can activate that competitive mindset and get your testosterone juices flowing, the better. And so if you've seen the Mike Young video recently where he's talking about his pre-performance routine, you will recognize some of the elements that I just talked about, where he has, he's dealing with his own comfort on stage. He's visualizing his opponent. He's visualizing being very aggressive to his opponent in terms of a fighting way, because League of Legends is not a fighting game. It's a video game. Sorry, it's not a fight, like a human-on-human fight. It's a video game. So we have to get... I have him visualize like actual physical, confrontation in order to get that competitive juices flowing, and making sure that he's in a state of arousal, which allows him to best like kick off the first 5 minutes of the game. All right, that's the answer about pre-performance routines. Now let's jump into question number 2.
Hey Weldon, so last week you mentioned that anger can actually help you perform better. And my question is, what is the difference between anger and tilt?
Okay, this is a really important differentiator. Tilt is not an emotion. Tilt is a choice. Anger is an emotion. You have anger, and then you make a choice. You make a choice to either focus on the game or focus on your thing, or you make a choice to let your emotion control your behavior. And then you just like, imagine a star that's decaying and it's just like spewing off matter in every direction and just like shattering into a million pieces. Like that's tilting. You're just like spewing off, whatever emotion you're experiencing it. You're trying to, usually a human tries to make other people experience the emotion, the pain they're experiencing. So if you have pain, you try to make other people suffer. Or you try to like absolve that suffering somehow, or you try to like ignore it, or you do all these coping mechanisms which are driven by your emotional state to try to solve that emotional state. That's tilting. Not tilting is when you're not emotionally driven. So you have the anger, it's there, but it's not driving your behavior. Instead, your behavior is driven by a set of disciplined values that are aiming towards a goal that you want to achieve, and you just continue to do those, but you do them harder because you're more angry. You like funnel the emotion out of the tilt and over there into the performance zone. So that's really simply the difference between anger and tilt. And since I spent a million years on the first question, and I'm going to spend a lot more time on the last question, we'll just call that the answer, and the rest of my entire brand is literally all about this topic. So you can go to any video and you will find more detailed and more interesting information about the difference between anger versus tilt, or at least what tilting is and what anger is, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, that's the premise. Are you controlled by your emotions and choosing to just let that fly? Then you're tilting. And are you using your emotions and controlling your actions volitionally? Then you're not tilting, unless you purposely choose some sort of stupid, nasty thing to do. In which case, I would say you're not really controlling your behavior, or maybe you're a bad person and you're purposely controlling yourself to be mean. I don't know. Anyway, before we dive into the last question, which is about, does music help with learning and pre-performance? I want to plug the Mac program. So check out mindgames.gg/MAC. This is my training program, 50 online videos. I keep lying about that. It's 47 online videos. I believe it's supposed to be 49, but I just round because it's easier to say. And it is the program that I do and have done with pro teams in League of Legends specifically. Actually, I also did it with the CLG CSGO roster back in 2015 summer, like 2015 July, June. I did the Mac program I worked on it with them with the CLG CSGO roster. So I have done it in CSGO as well, and I presented it to some other CSGO rosters, although I have never really worked in depth with the CSGO team yet, since they don't have the same kind of infrastructure that the other esports do. But anyway, it works pretty much everywhere, including life, including studies, including relationships. And the basic principles are those of mindfulness, acceptance, and commitment, the 3 stages or the 3 steps that you transition through mentally when you're going from 1 second you're tilting and the next second you want to be mentally resilient. You have to go through these kind of 3 phases where you first are aware of what is happening and what's driving you, and that's the mindfulness component, which you can actually train and you can get better at, and you can strengthen your muscle related to this anger versus tilt, right? You can strengthen the muscle related to choosing not to tilt. That is the muscle you strengthen when you're doing mindfulness. Then there's acceptance, which is essentially working on your forgiveness, working on letting it happen, working on accepting the internal state and stopping trying to resolve it. So where you're angry and you would tilt is you would try to resolve that anger or that frustration in some way. You just need to accept it and let it be there and not feed it and not try to make it go away. And then you can, because it's going to fade away, don't worry. Emotions fade away. They're chemical. They're in your brain. And if you don't feed them, then they just kind of fade away after about 45 seconds. 15 to 45 seconds, actually. And then commitment. By the way, I'm not joking. Like, I'm serious. Like, if you legit stop feeding an emotion, like, the chemicals will dissipate. Like, your neurotransmitters will get cleared from your synapses, and it's done. That is power. I'm handing you the key. Insight into the science of emotion is giving you power over your state. Initial emotion triggering is very light. You wouldn't even notice it because we have such overpowering secondary emotions that we build up out of those initial emotions in order to try to like have these. Anyway, we don't know why they exist, but commitment, the final step. And this is where you actually choose then the behavior you're going to do and then use the emotion to fuel it. If you have emotion left, or you just do it if you don't. Discipline in another term. So yeah, this is the program. And it's currently undergoing its 4th adaptation and iteration into its app form. So it's going to be soon an amazing, super cool app, which I just got the wireframes for yesterday, and holy cow, it is awesome. You guys are going to be blown away. We have 1,400 people more than that who have purchased the Mac program, and all of you are going to be beta testers in the new app probably within the next 4 to 5 weeks, depending on if I can finish financing the development of the app. And I'm super pumped to get it in front of you and start getting feedback and start preparing it for the release and launch. Anyway, that's the Mac program. Use the code AskWeldon to get your discount and to show that you come from this particular show so that I know, where people are hearing about it. All right, final question of the show. Y'all ready for this?
Hey, Weldon, Fishy here, competitive Halo player. I wanted to ask if you knew if there was any kind of music or a preferred sound or ambient to listen to sort of help get the mind into a state of focus, maybe for learning purposes or maybe even for just competitive purposes, maybe to be more aggressive.
I think the last thing you said was thanks. All right,
hey,
so
Weldon,
sorry, started playing it again. I had a student named Thierry Middleton. You can find his research if you search Thierry Middleton. That's Thierry, and he showed up at the University of Vascular with a mission to understand music and performance. And his sport is swimming, and he did his master's thesis on this, and then I think that he went back to Canada and he continued to research on it. But anyway, I'm going to read you the abstract of this applied research called in the Sport Psychologist journal called Regulating Pre-Performance Psychobiosocial States with Music. Okay, are you ready for this? The purpose of the study was to investigate the effects of music on swimmers' pre-performance psychobiosocial states. A purposeful sample of competitive swimmers, 17, participated in a 5-week intervention grounded in the individual zones of optimal functioning, eyes-off model, so this is what I explained to you earlier. Findings showed that A, pre-performance psychobiosocial states differentiated between best and worst performances. Translation, that it was they could tell if they were going to have a best performance or a worst performance based on their pre-performance psychobiosocial states. So it was predictive. Great. Meaning that the pre-performance measurements predicted the type of performance they were going to have. B, swimmers improved their ability to regulate their pre-performance states through the use of music. Cool. And C, the use of music has had a positive impact on swimmers' perceived effectiveness of pre-performance routines. So it improved swimmers' perceived effectiveness of pre-performance routines. We don't have a way of measuring actual effectiveness of pre-performance routines, I guess, or at least the difference in performance is not noticeable, unfortunately. Furthermore, swimmers' qualitative reports indicate that the music use was made more purposeful due to the introduction of a music intervention. The current study provides preliminary evidence in support of the use of music during pre-performance routines as an effective tool to regulate athletes' pre-performance states. Athletes are encouraged to engage in the process of carefully selecting music in accordance with individualized profiles related to optimal performance states. Okay, couple takeaways. Number one, pre-performance routines are about consistency. They're not about winning the particular day that you're doing it. So it's not about winning the day that you're doing it. It's about having a pre-performance routine so that you tick off all the boxes so that over time you show up with super consistent performance that takes a very small amount of effort to prepare for, that lets you essentially come in with like a very kind of like a systematized way of bringing yourself to arousal in the correct way so that you don't have to worry about it anymore and you can just do it and focus on your performance aspects and know that like you're going to be more or less squared away for the first couple seconds of the performance because you did the work ahead of time. Okay. And it's about consistency over time. It's not about winning that particular event, but it is about consistently doing it so that when you do have this super high stakes match, your pre-performance routine comes in and like helps level the emotional playing field of like this high stakes moment. Okay. All right. So number two, important thing. The use of music in a planned way helps both with these swimmers and other people theories worked with, their perceived control over their pre-performance routine and their actual ability to regulate their pre-performance states. So yes, the use of an intervention, meaning that you intentionally use music that you purposely chose according to your individual taste and profile related to your optimal performance states. So that means that it's not just like a certain kind of music is best. It means that you need to figure out your pre-performance states that you want to encourage and the ones you want to discourage. And then you need to choose a playlist or a type of music or a bunch of music that relates to that. And then you need to listen to the music while you're, I would say meditating, but imagerying, like the kinds of things that you want to do. So when you're building your pre-performance routine, right? And when you're building a pre-performance routine, you should build it in three vectors. You should think about what you're doing. So physically, what is your body doing and behaving and doing? And by that, I mean, not just like your movement and your body position and the way you're holding your muscle and their posture. But I also mean, are you talking to people? Are you socializing? Are you sitting in isolation? Are you walking around? Are you standing still? Are you breathing rapidly? Are you controlling your breathing? So what are you actually doing? What are all the things you can control about your behavior? Okay. Because some people really need to socialize. Mike Young, for example, on TSM, he might have said, you might have noticed in the interview that he gave where he detailed, basically he gave away his whole pre-performance routine. He said, he talks to people, and then he doesn't talk to people, and he goes and focuses, and he drinks his tea. So like these were all behaviors that were chosen intentionally. The next thing you should do is you should think about your self-talk. What are the things you're going to tell yourself? So related to your getting your high performance emotions, the ones that are functional that you want, what are the things related to those? And then mostly the thing you're going to be concerned of is dealing with dysfunctional emotions. So you look in your worst performance eyes off model and you see, oh, these emotions are dysfunctional. Here's an example of dysfunctional emotions. Relaxation. That's a positive emotion that's completely dysfunctional for performance. Hate is another one that's like very dysfunctional for performance. And a negative emotion. Here's an example of some functional emotions. Anger is a negative emotion that is actually functional for performance. And joy is a positive emotion that is actually functional for performance. So you're going to have these like two different eyes-off models, one for your best performance, one for your worst performance that you did through recall. And you're going to essentially say like, okay, these dysfunctional emotions, when they come up before an event, how do I deal with them? What are the things I do? What are the things that I say to myself in this routine? And how can I use music essentially to address these exact topics? And then you create a playlist that is regular that you can use that goes along with that. Okay, so my recommendation of music is for pre-performance routines and arousal states. I do not recommend music for performance itself. I think that performance with music, unless it's so for example, let's say you're doing a video game, right? You don't want to have music playing throughout the entire game. Let's say you're doing weightlifting. Maybe you want to have music playing up until you're engaging in the thing, and then because you're in pre-performance mode, and then your performance mode is like literally just the lift, right? And then you go back to pre-performance mode, right? So you want to use, maybe you want to use music to do that in terms of your pre-performance arousal to keep yourself going or something. But generally speaking, when you're actually in performance, you're not even hearing the music anyway, and you shouldn't be hearing the music anyway. You should be focusing on your performance. Now, let's say you're doing something like pull-ups, right? Where like you have the moment of pulling up, and then you have preparation for the next pull-up. So I purposely listen to music, like really heavy music during pull-ups, because on my way down, I'm doing my pre-performance routine for the next pull-up, and I need music as my cue for my arousal state there, because I do these in the morning at like 6 a.m. And I have found it to be very helpful because I trained that to be the case. I would like for it not to be, I would like for myself to be able to arouse myself to that point without needing music, but I think that it's a very useful tool. And since I'm not Buddha yet, I'm going to stick with music for my pull-ups until I can actually do enough pull-ups to help myself with that. So yeah, the neuroscience on music is clear. It like when it's a sensory input, it is that you're paying attention to, it's a distraction. But you should be able to not pay attention to it if it's there, because you should have good enough attentional control that it's not bothering you. And number two, there are all of these different states that you have within performance that sometimes could be related to like non-effort states where you're preparing for the next effort. And music can help with the pre-performance or the psychobiosocial state of that moment to help you like gear up for the next maximal effort. So yeah, that's what I think that I know about music that I tried to share with you, and I recommend going and checking it out, and I will continue to do more reading and research and fill you guys in on what I find as I explore music in performance. All right, guys, that's the show for you today. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I will see you on the Twitch stream live next time. Come check it out, twitch.tv/mindgamesweldon. Every single day, 7:30 p.m. Los Angeles time. That is until the time zone, the clock shifts. So you should probably check out 6:30 p.m. LA time too if you don't see me there at 7:30. But anyway, there's a timer literally below my stream that shows exactly the countdown to when I go live. Ciao.